Just as we're waiting for 1 or 2 more minutes, I'd just like to ask Sheikh Ali Rajani to unmute his mic, and maybe we can just get started. They say breaking the ice, but Alhamdulillah, I have no ice to break with him. We know each other quite well, Alhamdulillah. I've had the pleasure of his company, and inshallah, we all will in due course. And also, if there is anyone at this time who would like to just introduce themselves or say something, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself. Bismillah, you can introduce yourself, or if you have anything to say, we can get a small discussion going, maybe for 1-2 minutes, just something light, and then inshallah we can begin. So it is 10 p.m. Ji.
Assalamualaikum. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. You're going to be hearing a lot of thanks, but from now, thanks for organizing this session. You guys are doing a really good job, mashallah.
Our pleasure, inshallah. Whatever we can do.
Walaikum salam.
It's been good having all these Zoom sessions, actually. There's a lot of them popping up from different committees, and it's kept us busy this Ramadan, alhamdulillah. So one way or the other, the guidance is reaching us.
In some ways, it's been better than other Ramadan. Some people are doing more sessions this year than they've done any year.
Yeah, definitely. It's true. How are things in Qum?
Alhamdulillah, everything's well over here.
That's good, that's very nice.
Alhamdulillah.
Is summer really hit, or is it starting to show?
No, not yet. It's still spring, so it doesn't get too warm. In the evenings, it's quite pleasant, but it doesn't get too warm yet.
Okay, so let me just check in again if we can start. Okay, I think we have gotten a good number of participants in. Inshallah, others will be joining us as we are going through. I think we're good to go. So formally now, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Thank you all once again for tuning in today. This is our second edition of the Ramadan Baraza, organized by the Honorary Council of the Development Society. My name is Muhammad Hussein Raza. Inshallah, I'll be your host for tonight, and hopefully you won't have to hear too much of me. We'll be hearing from much more enlightened and knowledgeable individuals such as yourselves and Sheikh Ali, of course. So before we begin, I'd just like to give an introduction of our guest tonight. Sheikh Ali Rajani is a student of the Hausa in Qum. He has been studying there for a total of 8 years, and he's continuing his studies. He is part of a group, or has been one of the founding members of a group called the Bab al-Rida Institute. I'm sure a lot of us have heard of the Bab al-Rida short course that takes place every winter, but the Bab al-Rida Institute is the parent organization, and the Bab al-Rida short course is one of the 4 segments that they are involved in. The other 3 are their online, their Hausa studies, which I guess is online right now. And they are also involved in research, and they have an online platform that they have just launched. Inshallah, Sheikh Ali can introduce it further and explain a little bit more about it. But it has different short courses and different lectures and content that have been extracted from the Hausa and from Islamic publications. So welcome, Sheikh Ali. Karibu sana.
Ahsan, thank you very much.
And so, as is customary, we would like to begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran. And for that, I would like to invite Brother Ali Balu to share a few verses of the Holy Quran with us. So, Ali Balu, if you could unmute yourself, or if the host could just unmute Ali Balu, and we can begin, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, how are you all?
Alaikum salam.
I've also had a pleasure to meet Sheikh Ali Rajani.
It's nice to hear you. It's nice to hear your voice.
Alhamdulillah, yeah. So since it's the month of Ramadan, I'd like to start with a long surah, Holy Surah Baqarah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali
Yeah, that's all. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim.
Ahsan. Thank you, Ali. Thank you for keeping it short, I guess.
My pleasure.
Okay, so once again, without further ado, I would like to now pass on the reins for this online baraza to Sheikh Ali. But just before I do that, I would just like to remind us all of the structure that we will be flowing in for this event. The way that we've decided to have it go is, firstly, we will be having a small talk by Sheikh Ali, and after that we will be having question and answers. So just as a word to the wise, for us to have it go in the most efficient manner, if anyone has a question that they would like to ask, there is a feature where you could raise your hand on Zoom, and if everyone could just try and test that out right now. Okay, perfect. I'm seeing Mohammad Taki Okera, Shamil Hamir, Khalil Jiwa, Zamin Habib. Okay, perfect. People are raising their hands. So in the event that we need, if anyone needs to ask a question, you can just raise your hand, and we will go through the list of participants who have questions, and then the host can unmute you. You can ask your question. And then, inshallah, once we have through the question session, we can continue talking if time allows us, and we can see how to go about from there on. So, Bismillah, Sheikh Ali.
Ahsan, thank you. Short, but obviously it's got a lot of messages. So, Tawheed. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. So before we start the discussion on the topic, I want to mention 3 quick points, a little bit about how it's going to be working today and how I want you guys to interact and speak more. And then inshallah we'll start with the discussion. Rule number 1, whenever you have a question, whenever you have something to say, whenever you have even if you have do as Mohammed Hussein has suggested, don't worry about being in the menu exactly from where I left off. Number 2 is that I'm planning to, inshallah, speak for about 20 minutes. So you guys have your eyes on your clocks and your watches from now. After that, inshallah, we'll have an open question and answer session where you can ask questions. From what I'm hearing, this topic does have a lot of questions, and you guys do have a lot to ask. So inshallah, I'm looking forward to that. The third point is that if you do see people's names over here that are engaged or married, don't laugh at them and don't make fun of them. Even married people, even parents, in fact, need to hear these discussions so that they can help their children and any other people that are with them. So for example, if you're married and you have a younger brother, or even if you have friends or you have other people that aren't married that you're close with, you can help them and guide them in this topic. So it's a necessary topic for everyone to hear about. It shouldn't be one that in our community is only attended by people who aren't married yet. In fact, some of the instructions of this topic are specific to people who aren't married, because they need to sort their side of the issue out as well. People who are married, sorry. Okay, so that was a short, brief introduction to the discussion. You guys know how it's going to work, inshallah. I'll start now. So if we look at our lives, we have 2 very important decisions in our lives. One is our occupation and our job, and the second is our spouse and marriage. When it comes to our job, when it comes to our occupation, alhamdulillah, you guys have a lot of sessions and a lot of seminars and exhibitions and different things that are held for you to pick the best career that suits your personality and your interests and the different um, fields that can come into play when it comes to picking a job. But when it comes to spouse selection, we don't usually have many sessions. In fact, it's rare to have a session. Even when it comes to married life, the same rule applies. When you see, for example, your occupation and your job, you go through a lot of training before you're actually hands-on at work. You go through a lot of school is to do with preparing you to perform well at your job. University is aimed for the same purpose. A lot of jobs have training and internship for the same purpose again. But when it comes to marriage, it's something that we just expect people to fall into and find their own feet. Whereas this is a completely incorrect concept, and we really need to put time aside to first of all understand how to successfully and properly, correctly select a spouse, and then live a married life in the correct manner as Islam is explained. There's something that's really lacking in our communities, and efforts like the one tonight are really, really necessary. And once again, I thank the organizing committee for organizing such a discussion on such an important topic. Usually the topics that I held, for example, when you hear spouse selection, people join, I don't know, to have a laugh or to giggle about something. But it's not only like that. It's not just something that we're supposed to hear and, it passes. These are really, really important discussions, and they affect our life in a great, great way. It's really, really essential that these discussions are basically held. So when we look at spouse selection has a few important points. Obviously, it's a very long, there's a lot of discussions that we can have on spouse selection. Because I'm only going to be speaking for about 20 minutes, I've tried to pick 2 or 3 important topics that I really think are a big part and a really important part of this discussion that will allow for further discussions as well. I want to sort of light a candle and light a flame in you that, inshallah, if you are interested and you are serious about taking this discussion forward, you're able to, according to the 2-3 discussions that I'm just going to start. Obviously, I don't aim to complete these discussions, but inshallah, I'm trying to put across a few points in each one of these topics. Point number 1, which is a very important point, and it's the most essential point in this discussion, is that when we are picking a spouse, we need to do it very carefully. A lot of us, when it comes to the important decisions, as I said, picking a job or even a house, or even, for example, buying a car, or for example, even sometimes picking a friend, a university to go to, a lot of these decisions in our life, we count these as crucial and very important decisions, and do a lot of research and do a lot of study when we make these decisions. But surprisingly, when it comes to spouse selection, we just feel that our instinct is going to kick in and we're going to get everything right over here. For example, this person looks okay, yeah, everything's fine, the family is okay, let's go ahead, bismillah. And then you see later that, mashallah, this person had a lot of issues and there were a lot of problems that I didn't realize because I hadn't paid attention to the discussion of spouse selection. We have particular hadith about this. One hadith says that look at who you are tying to your neck. Obviously, this is not trying to say that they're going to strangle you. Your wife isn't going to strangle you. Don't worry. Inshallah, if you make the right decision, she's not going to strangle you. The point Ahlul Bayt is trying to teach us over here is that this is a decision that's going to have effects for a long time in our life. Let's say, for example, you're going to buy clothes. If you're going to buy clothes, your decision over here has effects on your life. Let's say you buy a shirt that you don't like. Yes, it's going to affect your life. You're going to regret it. But the worst case scenario is that you've lost some money. You've lost 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 shillings. Or if you buy expensive shirts, a little more than that. That's the end of it. There's nothing more than that. When you look at a car, again, if you make a bad choice, you buy a bad car, you're going to struggle for a few years until it comes time to sell the car, you're going to sell the car on. When it comes to different decisions, even university for that matter, if you didn't pick the best university in life, well, you have to bear with the consequences of it. But after a little while, inshallah, life will be back to normal. When it comes to spouse selection, if you make the wrong decision over here, Ahlul Bayt is teaching us, you're either going to have a life where you're going to have to suffer, or you're going to have to go through divorce. And divorce isn't something that's easy to go through. Islam discourages it very strongly. It's difficult in a social manner, in a social manner of things. In different aspects, it's a really, really difficult thing that nobody in today's world wants to go through, and nobody should go through. Obviously, there are some cases where divorce is necessary, but they're really, really less, and there are few cases that are like that. So we have to pay attention that this decision is a really important decision that's going to affect a lot of our life in the future, and it's going to have a very significant role in our life in the future. This might sound obvious to you. Now you might say that, well, that's a very obvious point. I mean, I know that the wife that I'm going to pick obviously is going to be, a person I'm going to stay with forever. I'm going to be spending most of my day with her and stuff like that. You'd be surprised at how many people ignore this and make a wrong decision at this stage. And unfortunately, a lot of their life ahead, they spend in regret, unfortunately. So that itself becomes a reason for us to be a little more aware and attentive and look out for such a discussion and follow the discussion of spouse selection very seriously. So that's point number one. Point number one was that take this decision very seriously. If you think that's obvious, think again. And when it comes your time to make the decision, pay a lot of importance and be really careful that I'm not making a rash decision. Point number two is a question that comes up a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you have this question. When am I ready to get married? This is a discussion that most youth think about all the way from about 17, 18, all the way up until when they get married. There's 4 or 5 categories I'm going to mention over here that are sort of titles to show the level of maturity that's required for a person to get married. Obviously, setting an age is very difficult. Some people come and say that, oh, all boys should get married at 18. Or some people say no boys can get married before 25. These are both incorrect. We can't set such ages and such standards. Rather, we have to talk about a level of maturity, and then everyone is able to gauge themselves and see whether I am mature or not. Point number one, the level a type of maturity that's required for marriage is physical maturity. This is a very obvious one, and before this, people don't think about marriage. I'm not going to explain this one. Number two is intellectual maturity. What do I mean by intellectual maturity? Intellectual maturity means that a person has the maturity inside them to act responsibly in life, to live life in a responsible manner. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to marriage. There's a lot of things that a person has to bear. There's a lot of hurdles one has to overcome. A person has to find within themselves this ability to compromise, this ability to make decisions on a rational basis. A person can, for example, the affairs of running a house takes responsibility. A lot of us, before we get married, we're single. Everything is sorted for us at home. They don't have to do anything when it comes to the house. No, after you get married, now you're the man of the house. You're in charge of the house. This takes a certain level of responsibility in a person. One of the really important examples of intellectual maturity is that a person understands the seriousness of marriage and the difficulties and challenges in marriage as well. A lot of people, before they get married, don't have a good image of marriage. And unfortunately, a lot of young people that get married face this issue. They feel marriage is just, for example, a game, or for example, somewhere where now you have a new friend and that's it. There's no responsibilities. There's no changes in your life. There's no compromise. There's no sacrifice. Obviously, there's an incorrect understanding of marriage. So intellectual maturity means that a person, one of the very serious points in intellectual maturity is that a person understands what marriage is. Have a good understanding of marriage before you get into it. The same way, before we start a job, we have an understanding of what this job is. What are the difficulties of this job? What are the perks of this job? The different parts of it, what's expected from me in this job. The same way in marriage, a person needs to study and discuss and talk about it in a way that they know what they're getting themselves into. They don't have an incorrect picture before they get into marriage. So that's intellectual maturity. A lot of it comes back to reading, discussion, understanding. And also, I said a part of it also comes back to the ability that a person is responsible and is ready to take responsibility in his life. Number 3 is economic maturity, that a person has reached a stage in their life where they're heading towards a career that can make enough money for them to sustain their life. This doesn't mean that necessarily right now you're earning the salary that, for example, you'd need, for example, when you have 2 or 3 or 4 kids, inshallah. Obviously, that's not the case. A person can't be expected at a young age to be earning enough money right now to cater for such a life. But this means generally that a person, basically, this trying to kick out lazy people who sit at home the whole day and don't do anything. If you see that you're a person that isn't doing anything, you're not working, you don't have a job, you're not working towards it, you're not in university, know that you're not ready for marriage. A person who's taken steps into starting a life where they're earning and they're working, this person is generally ready to get married. Obviously, taken steps, I want to clarify, it doesn't mean that they've, for example, signed up for a university course that they're going to finish after this many years and they might attend, they might not attend. No, a person, for example, let's say they're in their last year of university or second last year of university. They've even tried, for example, some short term jobs. Let's say in summer, they take up a quick job or something like that. They try these things, they try their hand at work. And basically, they see that if I was to graduate in 2 years, there are job opportunities where I am, and I will be able to at least provide the basic needs for my family. This is going to have some questions, inshallah. If you do have them, we can ask them later. If not, anyway, we'll let it go for now. Let me finish this discussion, and then inshallah we can open the floor up to questions. The important point when it comes to economic maturity and economic, basically a person being stable economically, is that we have to always understand that we have to work in this path. We have to work to earn. We have to understand that sustenance comes from Allah. Now, this is something that we all say, we all hear, we all talk about at times, but believing it is tough. Marriage for a lot of people is a step in this path. They see that, for example, look, until now I've never paid the expense. I've never even paid the luku of my house. And now I'm expected to pay rent and luku and this, all of these things. How will I be able to manage? Yes, of course, it's a tough thing. But when a person sees that I am on the path to earning and I do have the ability to work, inshallah, the rest, Allah will help me with that. I have to trust in Allah. This is a discussion on its own, inshallah. We can discuss it sometime. But just in passing, the rich person as well that got his salary basically confirmed and he is going to get at the end of the month this amount of money, he should also feel the same way and see that Allah is the one that's providing for me. This is not only specific to a person who doesn't have the financial ability. So that's number 3. Number 4 is emotional maturity. Emotional maturity means that a person is in control of their own emotions. You've seen some people when, for example, they lose a competition, they lose themselves. They feel that they have nothing left in life and they're so sad about everything and they don't want to talk to anyone and basically their emotions are not in their own control. The same way you find the other extreme. Some people, when they win or they succeed in life, they lose themselves. If you find them, for example, they've won, they're almost drunk in this victory. They can't, communicate. They can't do things in a normal way. This kind of person, they should know that they're not ready for marriage. A person needs to be in control of their emotions. To be happy and to be sad is natural. Islam isn't against this. It's when this becomes out of control that a person can't fulfill their responsibilities in life when a sad event or something comes up that makes them sad or a thing that makes them happy comes up in their life. Under emotional maturity, it's also important that a person has the ability to understand their spouse's emotions and cater for their emotions. For example, their spouse is feeling sad, their spouse is feeling hurt, their spouse is feeling insulted, their spouse is feeling all of these different emotions. The person should have the ability to sense this, to feel this, and to help them and to support them at this time. This is the 4th one. And the last one is social maturity. So a person should be able to think and they can consider the opinion of others. They're able to have good social interaction with other people. They have a place in society. You've seen some people, we call this immature. Anyone who doesn't have any of these, we call them immature, right? So if a person, for example, you see they're not able to interact in a social environment, they're not able to discuss with other people, they're not able to respect other people's rights in society, this person, they're not ready to get married. So I'll just go over them quickly again. Physical maturity, I mentioned, is clear. Intellectual, economic, emotional, present in themselves, they should know that they're ready to get married. Obviously, we can't expect that a person at the start of marriage has all of these maturities at the top level and basically they're the top at this sense. Obviously, that's not the case. We have to expect that they have an acceptable amount of each of these maturities at the start of marriage. A person generally should be responsible in their lives. You can see, I mean, among your friends, you'll easily be able to separate. There's some people, you look at them right now, these people, they can't even, for example, make their own breakfast in the morning. These people don't even wake up on time ever. They sleep in, the whole morning. They've got work, they've got university. They don't care. They just sleep in the whole day. Or for example, you'll find people that their understanding of marriage is a very childish and immature understanding of marriage. Or you find people that, for example, economically they're not working to earn money. They're not taking steps on this path. They don't care about this at all. Or for example, you find people that their emotions, as I gave the example, they're out of their own control. They're not basically, they don't have their emotions in their own hands. And you find people as well that in society they're not able to basically interact properly. They don't have a place in society. So this is the second discussion that I wanted to mention quickly. Am I ready for marriage? So putting an age to this, as you can see, is very difficult. But we can say this, that a person at 17 or 18 is unlikely to have these maturities at a level which is necessary for marriage. And on the other hand, we can also say that a person who's 28 and 27 has now definitely crossed the time frame that would be ideal for marriage. Because obviously 27, 28, a person is quite settled in life then. These maturities have now reached a level where they've passed the basic amount that's necessary for marriage. So anywhere between this sort of gap, as I said, it's tough to put a number on it. Each person is different. But when we see these maturities are in us, then a person knows that they're ready for marriage. The last point I wanted to mention very quickly is a really, really, really important point that unfortunately we see that most people don't follow this point correctly, unfortunately. When we're trying to get married to someone, when we're trying to find a person suitable to get married to, what I mean, there's different ways to find this person. Most people think that the best way to find somebody suitable for marriage is to speak to them, to start speaking to them, to strike up conversation with them, to, for example, go for coffee with them and basically speak heart to heart and see if we match or not. You'll hear these sort of words a lot. Islam tells us that this is really, really, really dangerous. First of all, we understand it even without, I'm going to explain the reasons that Islam has mentioned. Even if there's no reasons, it's something that Islam has mentioned clearly, so we have to be careful and aware of. But let me mention some reasons as well to make it even more strong in your hearts. And inshallah, we can change this culture that's formed, although it's not specific to our community. In fact, it might be less in our community than other communities in the world. But it's something that's very prevalent in our communities as well. The reality is that when you speak to a person, when you're speaking face to face to a person, and that person has kept a guard, basically, they're not allowing you to understand what's really within them. You won't understand what's really within them. You won't understand what they're like. How often has it happened that the first time you meet a friend, okay, you really get close to them, you hit it off, and you're having a lot of fun, and you're discussing a lot. A little while later, you start seeing some traits and some habits in this friend that he was hiding at the start. And it's not hard to hide. I mean, let's say, for example, right now, me and you were to go for a coffee, and we were to spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours having coffee and discussing different things in life. I can come off very impressive. I can tell you very nice things, and I might sound like a very impressive person. But is that enough for marriage? Is that enough just to say that a person speaks? nicely, they speak, for example, they speak well and they speak about nice things and they talk about nice things, is that enough for marriage? Islam tells us no. Islam says that we have to do proper research about the person without speaking to them directly. Now, how do you do that? That sounds very strange, right? I mean, how can you find out about somebody without speaking to them? Islam tells us that we need to find out from people that are close to this person. So, for example, let's say I had a close friend that I've spent nights with, I've, for example, gone on trips with. They basically know everything about me now. I can't, how much can you hide? I mean, you sit with somebody one sitting, twice, three times, four times, five times, you can sit and hide things. But for example, a person you've gone on trips with, you've spent nights with, you've really spoken heart to heart in a real manner, you can't hide everything. You can't hide anything from them. So we have to try and find out from these people about that person. That's one thing that you can't really tell. The second point is that whether we like it or not, when a person with the goal of marriage speaks to another person, a small flicker of affection and inclination to the other person forms in their heart. And this is natural. Allah has put this in us. And it's not a bad thing. It's just we shouldn't be fooled by it. Now, maybe if the second point wasn't convincing yet, when I give you a few examples of how people speak, you say, ah, yes, I've heard this. This sounds familiar. You see somebody, especially people who have spoken to somebody who wants to get married will have seen this, especially if they've met on any of these basically platforms, that social media, basically Instagram, or any of these that people meet on. You'll see somebody say this, that for example, you say that the person will come and say, I want to get married to this person. And then a person from outside of the scenario would be like, why? What did you see in this person? And they say that, you know what? I don't know what it is, but we're just in love with each other. We're just very much in love with each other. We've fallen for each other. And then, for example, if the other person knows that person, let's say you're speaking to somebody and they know that person that you're speaking about that apparently you've fallen in love with. And they say, but that person, for example, she's got an anger problem. You say, no problem. Marriage is for growth. Marriage is for us to understand each other and help us overcome our issues. But that person comes from a bad family. That person, their family is not even Shia. It's fine. Isn't marriage a chance for me to guide people? I want to pull people towards the religion of Allah. This person till yesterday, he wasn't speaking anything about Islam. Now, mashallah, he's become more mullah than anyone. What's happened to this person? This person, affection is formed in their heart. And what's wrong with affection? Affection, Sheikh, are you against affection? No, of course, Islam is not against affection. Affection isn't anything wrong, but it's when it comes. The Holy Prophet says, حُبُّكَ لِلشَّيْءِ يُعْمِي وَيُصِمُّ. When you have affection for something, it blinds you and deafens you. What's the Holy Prophet trying to teach us? That when, the same way this guy is speaking, the same way this guy is talking, the Prophet is telling us the same thing. When this affection is now formed, you're blind to all of her faults. And you want to know the scary part about that? The scary part is that this blindness doesn't last forever. In fact, it usually lasts 1 or 2 or 3 months, maximum 1 year. After 1 year, unfortunately, this blindness goes away. And then you start looking at this person and say, why in the world did I get married to this person? What good did this person have? The reality is that this was a false affection. Allah has put this inclination in us for the opposite gender. But if we misuse it, and basically, that's why if you look at and you can search this, I have some links if somebody's interested, I can send them later. I think it was an article on Psychology Digest. I'm not sure exactly. I'll send you the link if anyone's interested. And we say that 1 year after marriage, exactly how they describe it. They say, what in the world did I just do? Obviously, their words are a lot more strong than mine. I can't say words like that over here just now. But they say, what in the world did I just get myself into? Why? What is in this guy? Or what did I pull it through for 2 more years, and then they'll enter a stage of basically something like that. Well, Islam says that right from the start, open your eyes. Possible, right? The same when it comes to a spouse, of course, there's nobody that's ma'asum. But it's our responsibility to find the best spouse possible and creating affection that's caused by speaking to them, especially when it gets very heart to heart, if you know what I mean. This is the way to create in marriages. Love marriages are the ones where everyone's happy to get married. We need to understand their traits, and we really need to, with a lot of thought and maturity and logic, create this affection. Why are we all worried about creating affection? Allah has left a whole life ahead of us to create affection. Inshallah, you'll have the highest levels of affections with the best person, that you pick. Unfortunately, a lot of these love marriages, unfortunately, if you speak to them, they go through something like this, the realization period, that if they even continue. A lot of them don't continue, unfortunately. Obviously, you can't ask everyone about how they got married, but if you ever do hear some stories, try and like compare these things, compare marriages that happened in that way, that, you know, they were walking across the street and then he was standing in Musafar Khana and he looked across the road and he saw somebody over there and his eye fell on her, and then everything went forward from there. Or he was playing sports in boarding and then she looked from the whatever and things went across like that. Look at how these marriages went ahead. Unfortunately, most of them don't go ahead in the correct way. And then learn about these arranged marriages, that these people were apparently tied together and basically said, now sort yourselves out, and basically husband and wife, khudafis. And speak to them. Of course, arranged marriages is not a correct thing in Islam. In Islam, we don't have arranged and we don't have love marriages. We have intellectual-based marriages. Marriage, you're going to have a lot of love, inshallah, in the future. That's what Islam wants. In fact, the characteristic mentioned in the Quran about marriage is mawadda, one of the most important ones. Love is going to follow, inshallah. But base it on the right decision and do it in the right manner. So, inshallah, this mawadda forms in the future. Sorry, I went on the last point a little bit. It's because really, it's really something that our community does face, and we really need to work around and learn from, inshallah. So should we start with the questions that are written, Muhammad Hussain? Should we start with the written questions?
Yes, sorry, I was just getting unmuted. Yes, we can start with those, but just before that, I'd just like to once again extend our appreciation to you for the enlightening talk. I'm sure it struck home with a lot of us, and it's given us a lot to think about. Those who are on this process, those who are also already engaged or married, it's also given them something to think about. And inshallah, we can see from the chat that people are now raising their questions. MashaAllah, we have some really nice questions that have come up. So if we can just start from the questions that are on the chat, and then we can ask people to come on the video as well. So if anyone would like to also turn on their video, we would like to see your beautiful faces, MashaAllah, with the spiritual nur that you have gained so far in Ramadan. Please don't be shy. We are all brothers here. So Bismillah. Sheikh, if we could start with the first question. Would you like me to just read them out and then we can go for it from there?
Sure.
Be on the same page.
I have my eyes on the screen. That's better.
Okay.
Go on.
Perfect. So the first question is from Brother Muntazir Ramtullah, and it says, Salamun alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Has Babul Rida Institute included spouse selection as a subject on their online platform curriculum?
Yeah, so it's on we've just launched the website. It's been pretty much the start of my Ramadan. Yeah, one of the courses is spouse selection. It's about 3 to 4 hours, and it covers all the topics, and it's practical. So inshallah, if a person runs through that, it's got the same. The discussions I had today were sort of parts from that discussion. I tried to pick a few parts relevant for today.
Awesome. That's perfect. Maybe what we can do is we can also share the link for that course and also the link for the online platform in general. And so the brothers can then take advantage of that.
Sure.
Inshallah. So the second question is from Brother Shamil Amir, and he says he would like to ask when is the right time to get married. So I guess that is something that was covered during your talk. But if you would also like to go onto that, then Bismillah. Is there anything to add?
So if the question is the general question, I guess I covered it. If it's specific, then maybe they can explain.
Okay.
Shamil can explain.
Brother Shamil, would you like to come on and explain a little bit about your question, or we can then move on? Okay. Then the next question we have Brother Arif Okera. Brother Arif, if you'd like to just come on video, you can introduce yourself, and we can hear your question. We can all benefit, inshallah. Brother Arif Okera. So if the host could unmute him, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So, Sheikh Ali, I have my question is a bit long, but not that long. So, you said that it's a bit dangerous to meet someone, like to interact with them and say that, to get married with them, to make your life decisions. But many divorces happen due to lack of communication and fights, according to what I searched. So arranged marriages sometimes happens for a reason, and maybe the families know each other, so they meet up, but they don't give the people to talk. So, if they don't talk, what is the point of the marriage? How will you get to know the person in the marriage? How will you get to know the true face of the person?
Yeah. I'm very happy you brought that up. In fact, that'll allow me to sort of continue what I was saying. You're giving me an excuse to keep talking. Your question was long. The answer becomes longer then. It's not my fault. I mentioned at the end, arranged marriages are not correct. Islam doesn't promote that. This is the first stage when you're trying to find the right person. When ideally you've selected this criteria, obviously, that I mentioned. If anyone has a question, inshallah, we can speak a little bit about them. When you've applied these criteria and said X, for example, is a good person and is suitable for marriage, before you get engaged, before anything goes forward, you have to speak to this person. There's no doubt. You have to speak to this person. In fact, lengthy at times. Sometimes you have to meet and you have to sit and talk about different issues. That's mentioned as well as in the course. And there's a set of topics that you need to speak to this person about. Now, there's no doubt in that, and I'm not trying to downplay that side of things. The discussion was in finding someone. You know, for example, you guys have obviously heard of speed dating. Some people have tried to make this sort of Islamic, where you're speed finding your wife. Obviously, this doesn't work. I mean, from speed dating, you can't find somebody that you're going to spend your life with, as I mentioned, the points that I mentioned. I hope that clarified, and I don't have to speak too much more.
Okay, we have a few questions. MashaAllah, there's been a lot of questions on the chat. I just wanted to point out something. Some brothers are asking several questions, which is obviously very nice and very much welcome. In the spirit of fairness to everyone, so that everyone can get a chance, and in the interest of time, I will just be going through the chat and asking one question per person. And then what we can do is, in the event where you really would like to ask your second or third question, what we can do is then you can just raise your hand, and in the order that the hands are raised, we can then direct the question to Sheikh Ali. Hope that's okay with everyone. So Brother Muntazir Amtullah once again is asking, how much of a role do the parents play in spouse selection? Okay, this is interesting now. And what are the limits of the parents for selecting a spouse for their child? So a heavy question here. Let's see.
Ideally, the parents shouldn't be selecting the spouse. There's a few reasons to it, but generally the conclusion is that the parents shouldn't be selecting the spouse. The parents play the role of for example, an advisor, a person who's, because for example, let's say you have a boy who's 22, 23, looking to get married. Well, they don't know people in the sister side of the Jamaat, inshallah. Some people do, but and a lot of people don't. So this is where, for example, the role of the mother comes in, and she says, "Asari chokri cha, asari chokri cha, asari chokri cha." This is the role of the parents generally. But for example, for the mother to say, "Asari chokri cha," and you have to go and get engaged to her, and she's the one that I have in my mind. If you don't get engaged to her, I won't be happy with you. No, of course that's incorrect. It's not correct at all. The whole point of the discussion of maturity and making sure that a person is ready for marriage is that a person is ready after marriage to run their own life. There's an incorrect culture at times, and an incorrect thought that we want, as parents, we want to run the lives of our married children. It's completely incorrect. Whether it comes to whether it comes to how they are bringing their own children, what they do, where they live, how they buy, how they talk, these things, basically now once you've got them married, you have to trust them. Obviously, you can always be you should be an advisor and a helper, share your experience with them. But to impose and to force is completely incorrect and not allowed.
Awesome. We have a question here from Brother Shanibas Jafar. He says, and he's quoting, "When you have affection for something, it deafens you and blinds you." It's a saying from the Holy Prophet. And he says, considering this hadith, how long should we take to know our potential spouses before making our mind up? That is to say, to ensure you've passed the regrettable false affection period.
That's a very, very good question. There's a discussion on research that we have to see who the criteria applies to. So there's criteria that Islam suggests that look for these 5 things, for example, in a spouse. A person has to now speak to close friends of this person, or at least teachers or people that know this person properly, and clarify that these 5 points exist strongly in this person. So for example, the first criteria is religiousness. A person should speak to, let's say you ask your mom to speak to her madrasa teacher, to speak to her close friends if possible. You ask your sister to speak to them, to see generally what kind of a person is this. Is this person responsible about their religious duties? Do they take them seriously or not? When you have a tick over there, or for example, you see that she's got it to a good level, you go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you've cleared all of these criteria. Once these criteria are clear, then is the time that you can talk to that person. Obviously, that's also got a way that the first day you don't necessarily meet them. You can start with, for example, an email. Now you've shown to yourself that, look, this person, I found out from good sources that know this person well, that they're suitable in all the criteria that Islam has asked me to look out for. Now, basically, we have to see if we match with each other. Is there any, basically, hindrances in between the two of us? Yeah.
Awesome. I guess that also answers Brother Muntazir's subsequent question, which said, what according to you is the best way to find compatibility between a couple before marriage, right? And so if we're following these steps and we have the criteria set up, and once we check off the criteria, then we move forward, then inshallah compatibility can be found or discovered.
Awesome. Yeah. Number 5 of the criteria is compatibility specifically. And as you mentioned, after that, there's certain compatibilities that you can't find out from friends. For example, how 2 people match is very difficult to ask from friends. But there's questions that you ask directly to the person that would see if there's any basically hindrances, any barriers in the two, basically in this person and that basically these two people, if they're suitable for marriage or not. Yeah, there's
And
obviously going to be questions on the criteria. If possible, I'll explain about them shortly somewhere. Where you see suitable, I don't mind.
sure, sure. So I guess tying into that discussion, there's also another question that I've just seen here that says the personalities of people change over time, and you can't expect the person to be the same over time. How do you deal with this in the context of marriage, especially because we hear people saying he or she isn't the same person they've married, and they've changed it to a person that they maybe can't live with? And so, where does compatibility come into play over there, from the initial phase going on towards the later stages of marriage?
Yeah. So when it comes to compatibility, you're talking about basically personality of people. One mistake that can happen is that, like I said, we incorrectly understand this person. So, for example, you get to know, for example, uh, somebody, I don't want to say you guys, somebody gets to know a girl, for example, and they see that this person, mashallah, they're very kind, they're very polite, they're very careful, they, mashallah, they dress really well, they put makeup on every day, and they come out into public like this, mashallah, they're really careful of themselves. I got married to this person. Now, after marriage at home, you see, mashallah, this person is exactly the opposite of that. The reason was that you didn't see the real picture of this person. You actually saw what she was trying to present to the world. When you get married, she's not going to present that to you. She's going to present what she really is. So one of the big issues of this question, as in why this question occurs, why this issue occurs, is that we don't follow the correct ways. And we try and, for example, trust our instincts in trying to find the right person. But let's say that's not the case. Let's say a person really did their research and a person changes in the future. Now, if you look at the criteria, you'll see that a lot of these criteria stop that from happening. Even if a person does change, it can be changes in their personality. For example, let's say a person was very social. Later on in their life, they become slightly antisocial or they become slightly introverted. Well, that's not so much of an issue in terms of life. You might have to make changes. You might have to reduce your public gatherings and how much time you spend with family and all of that. But it's not going to affect your life in a major way. But let's say, for example, if this person was to leave religion, or let's say, for example, this person all of a sudden was to get a major anger problem, or let's say, for example, this person all of a sudden was going to become really stubborn, the criteria, if we do the research correctly, prevents this from happening. That won't let that happen. If there are minor changes, or even if there are other changes in life, a person has to adjust. I mean, marriage is about sacrifice, compromise, adjusting. Marriage, if somebody thinks marriage means that basically we're just two people that do everything the way each wants, we just live together under one roof, they've not understood marriage at all. Marriage, basically, you have to pick a lot of things. Basically, you have to pick one of a lot of things. You have to compromise. You have to come to a conclusion. You can't say that, for example, I like my bedroom to be this color, so I'll do this color. You like your bedroom to be that color, so you do that color. I like this sort of mattress. You like that sort of mattress, so you get that mattress. Of course, this is not called marriage. This is called basically staying with somebody in a dormitory. Let's say, being neighbors to someone.
Yeah.
So marriage is all about that. A person will change. There are going to be occurrences. A person might have a disease. They might face a new problem in life. We have to learn to deal with that. That's all a part of marriage.
Awesome. And as a host, I'm normally expected to jump in with a few tidbits of wisdom and a few quotes here and there, but I feel like I'm a little bit out of my league, so you will all forgive me for the lack of quotes and for the lack of funny marriage-related jokes here and there. Maybe we can ask Sheikh Ali to give us some marriage-related jokes here and there, and we can go forth from there. Okay. So I just wanted to take this opportunity now to take a question from those who have raised their hand. So Brother Ali Naki Ismail. So the host, if you could unmute him, and Brother Ali Naki, if you could introduce yourself and ask your question, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I just wanted to ask, I think you've touched on it a little bit, but you said that there are times when you think the person is right for you, but your judgment could be clouded by lust or affection for that person. So how do you differentiate that your judgment is not being clouded by lust or affection for that person, and indeed that person is actually right for you? It's not just a lust or affection that's making you think that the person is right for you, and then in a year you'll think that no, you made the wrong decision. So how do you stop this from happening? How do you counter that lust or look at it properly?
Very good question. If we do follow the system where we do research correctly in an objective manner, we look very, for example, very with no sort of ulterior motive, no sort of affection. In fact, at the first stage, when your mom says, for example, you go to your mom and you say, who are the, for example, suitable girls in my Jamaat? And she says, these 5 people. Then, for example, you take each of these 5 people, let's say, for example, now this person, you shouldn't even look at their photo first. Don't create any sort of inclination and connection and interaction with this person at all. Don't go on the Instagram page first thing. Don't do that first thing. Later, you have to do it. You should do it before you get married. You should go on the Instagram page. Don't write them a message. You should check out the Instagram page. The way to do it is that a person, without looking at photos, without looking at their Instagram page, asks a person who knows that person well about this person. Now, for example, here, if you hear this person has a major anger problem, you sitting back, not affected, not sort of in any sort of relationship, not having this feeling of affection in any sense to that person, you say that I don't want to get married to a person that has a major anger problem that they can't overcome. I want to point out here, anger isn't an issue in itself. It's the fact that a person can't overcome this consistently. This is not a person that we want to get married to. This is not a person that you want to get married to. So a person does this in a very rational, logical manner. If they find out, for example, this person's family has gone through divorce, her brother is, for example, on drugs, her sister, for example, ran away from home, well, you say that, why don't I get married to this person? But when you flip the situation that now you've met this person, she's in your heart, you think at least, and now you find out that her father's, for example, divorced, her brother's a drug, you say, no, her brother, she tried to advise the brother. She was the one that anchored the family. Oh, you're lying to yourself. You can hear yourself speaking in this manner. When a person's speaking rationally, logically, there's no reason for that. It's like, for example, when you're picking a job, you don't say, for example, this firm, they've not been able to pay any of their employees' salary for 3 months, but I have an inclination to this firm. I'm going to sign up over here. I'm going to go for the interview over here. Or this, for example, firm, it's known that, for example, they don't keep their employees. They fire them quickly after a year or 2 years. They don't want people who stay for a long time. They don't want to, pay them extra money. You're not going to sign up for this job. You're not going to go for that interview. The same way, when a person looks at things very rationally, they won't get carried away. If it's, for example, let's say some people say use initials. Let's say there's 4 names your mom has given you: SY, ZK, MT, and I don't know, WP. WP has an anger problem. Put WP aside for now. KY, for example, has got this sort of family. Put her aside for now. This one, for example, this initial has got very, very good, for example, everything is good about her. Okay, let's take it forward with her. See, it becomes sort of, you can look in an intellectual and a logical manner. But for example, we do the way we do things, as in what's common at times, at least. No, that doesn't work like that.
Awesome. But now, Sheikh, what if this WT was meant to be your soulmate, and you let her go just because she has a little bit of an anger problem? Which is actually one of the questions here, which says, what is Islam's view on soulmates? If I'm getting this question correctly, let me just look through the chat.
If possible, I'd like to hear what the person thinks, understands of soulmates, so that I can explain better.
Sure. This question was from Brother Shane Abbas. Jafar, Brother Shane Abbas, if you could just unmute yourself.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. So this I just asked because it's a very popular notion that, okay, everybody has this one perfect soulmate that God picked for them when he was making everybody, and he sent everybody to earth with one person who's like the perfect person made for them as a spouse. Now, what is Islam's take on this notion that, okay, there's that one perfect person for you, and you have to find them. In it's like a needle in a haystack situation where you have to find that perfect person who's meant for you. What's Islam's take on this idea?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is what people do, unfortunately. They take an idea and then they say, God has made that soulmate. So they make it Islamic like that. No, we don't have such a thing in Islam. In fact, hadith when it comes to spouse selection are not like that at all. In fact, we have a lot of hadith that mention the criteria that if you find a person that's religious, that has good traits, that has this, then marry them. Don't delay marriage. There's no cause to delay marriage to find that person that's your soulmate. No, there's not a correct understanding in Islam. On the contrary, on the opposite side of things, in fact, we have in Islam that when a person carries out a correct marriage, Allah Himself will bring these two together. Allah Himself will put love in their hearts for each other. If you want, you can call this a soulmate. That's why I wanted to hear exactly what you meant. This is a soulmate now. In fact, we have some hadith that might be a little scary, especially for the married people over here, that says that some people, their spouses are so good that they'll become their huri in Jannat. You know, this my Ramadan, mashallah, every night we recite, they give us hurul ain. They say that your wife becomes so good that she becomes your huri in Jannah. So if you call this soulmate, this is the correct way of saying soulmate, and Islam does promote this. But that is that one person that Allah has created in the world, and now you have to, for example, start talking to everyone and try and find that one person that you click with. No, this has Islam doesn't speak of this at all.
Perfect. I guess we've addressed this issue of soulmates. So if anyone is a little bit unsure, then WT is not the one for you. Okay. Brother Muntazir Patel had a question. Brother Muntazir, if you could unmute yourself and address us, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Basically, I just wanted to ask one question that we usually find some ways to decide if a person can be right for you. So, can spying be one of the options, like just to go behind that person, or just ask someone else to spy on that person? I know this sounds a bit weird, but does Islam allow that?
Spying to find what exactly? A lot of the spying that I've heard of is to get basically see how she looks. Is that what you mean, or do you mean something else when it comes to spying? Because I don't know if you can spy on somebody's anger or their religiousness. What do you mean exactly?
Brother Muntazir?
Yeah. Basically, for example, if someone says that, no, I do not smoke, okay, but you don't trust him. So if you really want to know that this person smokes he or she doesn't smoke, so can it be the right way?
Yeah, so this is exactly what we're trying to say, that don't ask somebody if they smoke or not. Rather, try and find out from a close friend. Let's say, for example, you, Brother Muntazir, right now you have some close friends. These close friends know exactly, forget if you smoke or not, what you smoke. Inshallah, you don't smoke, isn't it? What a person may be smoking, how often they smoke, where they smoke. They know everything. A friend knows everything. And if it's a very close friend, maybe they're even involved in it. That's why we have to find out from the friends. If you ask a person up front, yes, a person can lie about a lot of things. Smoking it's hard to cover up. It's hard to hide. But for example, let's say whether they're careful about their namaz or not, whether, for example, they respect their parents or not, whether they have a good relation with their siblings or not. How can you find these things out? The only way to find out is from a close friend or somebody that knows that person well. If you speak to a person, say, oh, me and my brother, like they've never been a closer pair of siblings in the world. And then you find out later these people haven't spoken to each other in months. So a person can say anything, and it's not hard to hide it. You can get away with saying things like this for a long time. So if you mean spying as in you mean research, that's essential. That's what we really need. Yeah. I'll also add, if you're trying to say this, ghiba and backbiting, one of the places where backbiting is allowed not only allowed, necessary is if you know something bad about your friend that somebody is asking you. Somebody comes and asks you, this brother WP, brother WP, what's his, for example, how are his mannerisms? How are, for example, is he careful about his namaz, his fasting, his khums? And you say that for you know that this person, ya khud, that is the wrong person he's asking about. This person, he doesn't even know what khums means. And then you come and tell that person that, no, alhamdulillah, he's a good person. And then somebody comes and tells you that, what did you just do? You said, no, it's backbiting if I mention the fault of my brother. No, this is one of the places where it's necessary for you to mention the fault of the other person. So Islam, if you mean spying in this manner, that is exactly what we mean.
Awesome. So if anyone had any ideas, then now you know the correct way to spy on someone. The halal way to spy on someone. Okay. So we have a question from Brother Muhammad Zamin Kara. Brother Muhammad Zamin. Admin, if we could unmute Brother Muhammad Zamin Kara. Is he on the chat? Okay, I can ask his question. I think it's a question that I was personally expecting to come up at some point. It's good someone has asked it. So he says, we are told piety is amongst the criteria for spouse selection. To what extent does it apply to new reverts and Ahle Kitab?
So you're trying to, the question is more when we're looking to get married to somebody like that, should we, what criteria should we look for in these people? Is that the question?
I think what he's trying to ask, if I'm not mistaken, is that how much can we apply the criteria that you had mentioned on the address to the new reverts and Ahle Kitab? To what extent can we apply the same criteria to them as well?
So when they're looking to find somebody, what should they be using as criteria? Or if we're looking to find somebody suitable and we come across a new revert, and how much we should apply these criteria to them?
I think it's the latter.
Number one or two? Okay. Number two, when it comes to marrying a person that may not fit all the criteria, but there is some benefit in this. So for example, a person says that I'm, for example, very solid in my religion. I'm careful about everything. There's another person that I know that, for example, is newly converted to Islam, or there's a person that's grown up in a bad family, but my research tells me that they show a lot of potential. Or for example, a person who's got a disability, or a person who's handicapped, or a person, or all of these things. This is a specific type of marriage. This isn't for everybody. A person who's very sure about their own faith and has it in them that they want to go out of their way to help another person and is ready to put up with his difficulties. Somebody should know that marrying a convert, maybe you look at, for example, that they're from a Western country and maybe they look a little nicer than other people, and that pulls you towards them. Well, understand that there's a lot of cultural differences and they won't understand a lot of what you want to instill in your children. You're going to have to work a lot on that aspect a lot. So if a person understandingly gets into such a marriage, well, there's a certain part of society does need to take up these sort of marriages, and is correct. And it's actually something that's basically it's recommended, and it's something that's good. It's a positive thing, not only acceptable, but it's very difficult. It's not something that most people or many people should get into. It's only people who are very sure about themselves and really know what they're getting themselves into. Really understand. Marrying a person with a disability, marrying a person with a mental health issue is excellent, but very tough as well. It needs to be for people who are sure about their faith and are ready to put up with it.
Perfect.
And that person will obviously get a great reward as well.
I think that also touches on a little bit on the question about intercaste marriages and marrying from a different culture. Is that the same concept that applies, or is it a little bit different?
Yeah. Intercaste is a bit of a tough word because caste is tough to sort of categorize. If we're
Yeah,
trying to talk
I
about,
agree.
for example, people living in different countries, or is it talking about different sort of ethnicities? Is it talking about different upbringing backgrounds? Anyway, I'll try and answer in a general way, which sort of covers this. I think it's a good time also, if you don't mind, I mentioned
Yeah.
quickly the criteria because a lot of the questions are coming back to that.
Okay, that's good. I think that would answer a lot of questions as well. And sorry, just to add a little bit on, I think in
Yeah.
regards to the caste question, the word caste in this question would not be the most favorable term to use. So I think what the brother was trying to ask, if he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what he was trying to ask is marrying from a different culture, from a different
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
upbringing, as you said.
Sure, yeah. So that'll come in the last criteria. So the
Sure.
5 criteria that Islam really pushes us for, and there's a lot of hadith in the course. I go through some of the hadith as well. You guys can check it out over there. Number one, the most important, the uncompromisable trait is religiousness. That a person is careful and responsible about their religious duties. We're not looking for somebody that necessarily prays namaz shab every night. That's excellent, but that's not the criteria we're looking for. The criteria we're looking for is somebody who's careful of their prayers, careful of their fasting, their homes. There are different rights that they have upon them in the Islamic manner in religion. I'm going to go fast. I'm not going to give too many examples so that we can cover more. I can see time is running as well. Do stop me, Moses, if you want to move
Sure.
on.
Sure.
Number 2 is outstanding bad traits. Outstanding here means standing out, not outstanding in a good sense. It means that bad traits that a person can't control and they're really prominent in their life. So you've seen people, for example, that have an anger issue. They can't control it. Whether it's on the football pitch, whether it's at the dinner table, whether it's at school, whether it's anywhere, they can't control this. Or a person that's extremely jealous and they can't overcome this jealousy. Or a person that, for example, is very envious and holds hate in his heart towards other people. This type of people that will show this to their friends, we need to avoid these kind of people. And our hadith are very clear about this as well. Number 3 is rationality. A person who's a rational person. We have to check and see if this person, when the truth is presented to them, even if it's against what they feel, are they ready to accept it or not? Or are they somebody who's just stubborn for no reason? We've seen these kind of people as well. Whatever you want to put across to them, they're against it. My way or the highway. Obviously, this person isn't one that's suitable for marriage as well. Now, these 3 traits form the most important traits when it comes to marriage. And these are the uncompromisable traits. And you can see why. When a person is rational, even if they do lack in one trait, later on in life, you find out that this person never faced this issue. Now they're showing issues of anger. They never had conflict. Now they're showing prejudice and conflict against other people, for example. When a person is rational and they're careful about Islam, a person can take this and bring this back under control. When a person doesn't have these traits, they can't do that. So these 3 traits are essential, not compromisable. You can't say, and the other 2 you see, the later 2 you see, they're slightly compromisable at times if the first 3 are strong. You can't come and say that, oh, this person isn't rational, but it's okay, we'll figure things out. When you're getting married to a person who's stubborn and irrational, you can't discuss, you can't explain, you can't have understanding between the 2. You tell them that, for example, look, this action that you did, you said this was incorrect. I know I did something wrong as well, but you said, no, I didn't do anything incorrect. I didn't do anything wrong. Nothing I said was incorrect. Well, if you're going to be like that, that's called being childish and that's immature. You're not ready for marriage. So a person who's rational, so I'll mention the 3 again. These are the 3 most important. Religiousness, they're careful about their religious responsibilities. Traits, they don't have any traits that are incorrect that stand out. And the 3rd is rational. Number 4 is family background. That a person comes from a respectable family. Now, Khojas usually put this in number 1. But it's okay. We don't put in number 1. We put in number 4. There's some people that have the first 3 so strong that they don't have the best of families. But still, this can be compromised. It can be if there's nobody that has all 4. Obviously, if you have somebody that has the first 3 and also a very good family background, all the better. But then you find somebody who doesn't have a good family background, but has the first three very strongly, we can still compromise with that. We have a hadith about this as well. There's a beautiful hadith that the Prophet says that stay away from the green and the plants that grow in wastelands, in area that there's trash and rubbish. Because these greens look green, but their root is the same trash and dirt. So this is also something that we have in Islam. The fifth one is compatibility, that the two have certain compatibilities. Obviously, this is one that can be compromised the most, but it's something that's important. Islam does give importance to this. Compatibility in itself has different types in it. One is in age. Ideally, I know I'm saying a lot over here, and you guys, if you're not writing this, is probably passing you fast. But it's to give an overall idea, and a lot of your questions revolve around this. I'm sure we have a question about age. Can I marry somebody that's this many years older than me or this many years younger than me? Age, ideally, Islam says the man should be 1 to 4 years older. That's the ideal age. If the woman is older, it's not preferred. But as I said, this number 5, it can be compromised. If there's a case that's an extremely good, for example, case WP is really suitable, but for example, their age is a few months older, or let's say a little bit older, it can be compromised if there's nobody that has all of those criteria and is younger. That's number 1, compatibility. So 5.1 is age. Compatibility, part 2 is physical beauty and appearance. You should find somebody that's suitably good looking. You shouldn't aim for somebody that's much higher. Again, obviously, you can tell this is something that's compromisable. If a person says, look, I'm ready to get married to such a person, that's fine. That's okay. A person can go ahead with that. But they should really understand and what they're getting themselves into. Number 3 is cultural. A person should pick somebody ideally from the same culture. Why is this? It's because that in the same, you see, basically humans, we're social. And in marriage, one of the most important parts of marriage is communication and talking and discussion. People from similar cultures show each other signs of communication that they can understand easily. For example, in certain cultures, it's rude to interrupt the other person. In certain cultures, it's rude to, for example, not show facial expression when you're talking to the other person. In certain cultures, it's rude to all of these different things. And you don't have at the start of marriage or even later in marriage, is friction and this sort of teething going on that, you know, she's been hurt about something that I'm doing that in my culture isn't incorrect. You know, for example, Kojas are very, I don't know if panchat is a nice word, but basically they're nosy. Other cultures might find this very insulting. Why are you asking about my parents? And why are you asking about all the people in my family? Why are you trying to find out how much they used to earn, for example? These kind of things, they don't concern you, for example.
Yeah.
So culture plays a part.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of relation with in-laws, with family, if you pick a person from Russia, for example, however good their iman is, it's difficult for you to communicate with your father-in-law and your mother-in-law, which is a part of marriage as well. So I said age, I said looks, I said culture. Number 4 is economic background. So you should come from a similar economic background. It shouldn't be the case where either one is very much more well-to-do than the other. Again, I'm saying this again. Number 5, compromisable. If the two are understanding and ready, it can be compromised. And the last one is in terms of studies. Their study background should be similar, or the man should be slightly ahead. It's got reasons for it. Obviously, there's no time to explain the reasons over here. So culture does play a part, and culture is important. In fact, we have a hadith about culture, and that some hadith even quite strongly suggest that we should get married to people in the same culture as us. But if there's a case where it's an exception, where a person on the other side is very outstandingly better than the other candidates and the other people that you have in mind, inshallah, a person can take that forward, and then there'd be tips for a person on how to overcome this cultural clash and differences. But ideally, no.
Perfect.
So that's basically the criteria.
I think, oh, that's perfect. Brother Shanabaz Jafar, thank you so much. He's actually just written down most of these points and criteria that we've just talked about. So for everyone who just wants to get a frame of reference from that, you can just check the chat and they're all there. Once again, thank you so much, Brother Shanabaz. So I think in the interest of time, we will take one if not 2 questions. Sheikh, how are you on time?
I'm okay to go on, inshallah, for now.
Okay, perfect. So we'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and then inshallah we will bring our discussion to a conclusion. If at all there are any questions that are quite private in nature, I know with the topic that we have in hand, there might be some questions. Sheikh, you can maybe echo my sentiments on this. That there might be some questions that brothers would want to ask in private. Is it okay if you could share any sort of, maybe let's say your email or contact information, that maybe some of the brothers here could forward their questions to you, if that's okay?
Sure. I don't mind if you have my WhatsApp number, you can put it. I don't mind.
Sure.
It's just don't have expectations of very quick replies. Maud Hussein will explain. Inshallah, I'll try my best. I'll try my
No,
best,
it's fine. We will we'll add Sheikh's number over there. Please don't bombard him with a lot of questions. I know he's on lockdown, but he also still has quite a few things to do. Okay, so moving on, there was a question from Brother Muhammad. Brother Muhammad, if you'd like to just unmute yourself and ask this question, and if you could also tell us your last name, so we could know which Muhammad is it, because we have several Muhammads on the chat. Admin, if you could just unmute Brother Muhammad. Okay, in the meantime, I'd just like to mention to everyone here, it's a small request from our side. We have a poll that the admin has prepared, and I think this would maybe be a good time to just ask everyone to just quickly give their responses on this poll. It should be coming up on your screen right now. So it's just quickly multiple choice questions that will really help us for our future events. It would also be something that we can use as a point of reference so that we can tailor this experience better. So it's just a quick poll. I think it's just one question on the poll, if I'm correct, admin. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So if everyone's gone through with the poll, we can move on to one more question. We can take a question from Brother Shanebas Jafar. Once again, Brother Shanebas Jafar.
Yes, Sheikh. So the other question I have is regarding when you're actually talking to the person directly, in the sense that you've done your research and you found out that, okay, these criteria are actually present in the person, and now you're trying to find out more from the person. And over here, based on experience, different people open up differently. So, and at times it takes time to get to know a person. So how long is it recommended to talk to a person before making your mind up? And is there a guidance that Islam provides on this? And similarly, usually what happens is, okay, what happens in the community is you get options. Okay, there are these 4 to 5 people who are all very good. You should talk to them. And many times people tell you to talk to them simultaneously and then decide. So what's Islam's take on that? Should we talk to one person at a time, get done, and then move to the other person? Or is it fine to talk to multiple people and then make up your mind? But overall, how long is it allowed, to talk to the other person to know exactly that that's the person for you?
Very, very good questions. Very practical, on the ground questions. How long? First, I'll take that question. How long? There's about 15 topics that should be discussed. So it's in that course. You can find them over there. For example, children. How many children do you want to have? For example, which families do you want to be in touch with? For example, how do you plan to bring up children? For example, what is your, for example, goals in the future in the future of your life? For example, um, what do you see our ideal economic standing to be? These are different questions that a person should discuss. Obviously, it's got a way of doing it. It's not something that you, the first time you, for example, pick up the phone, for example, and you found a suitable person, you pick up a phone the first time and you ask them, for example, do you want to have children or not? Obviously, it's not suitable, right? Doesn't make sense to speak like that. But a person in a very calculated and the correct way that starts from basically it's got some tips. I'll take a lot of time if I'm going to go into everything over here, but I want to say this, that it doesn't have a set time. It's sort of topic based, that once a person feels that these areas are all ticked for me and I'm ready, this person doesn't have any issues, we seem to be compatible, we have enough in common to start a married life, then a person goes ahead and gets married from there. Obviously, a person not gonna, you shouldn't be able to, the goal isn't for you to be able to write a book about the other person before you get married. Some people feel like that, you know, I need to find out what age, for example, they had their first bike, what age, for example, you know, they went to this place the first time, they traveled alone for the, these are questions that inshallah, if the person is suitable in the future, you will get to know. There's a lot of time ahead. Don't try and finish everything off over here. But there's some essential discussions a person need to have. These people need to have, these two need to have, that there's about, as I said, about 15 topics. Once these are clear, then a person's ready. On average, this shouldn't take, obviously I can't say time because it depends how often you're going to be speaking or meeting. Ideally, the first one would be some sort of email or a message where it's not speaking directly. And then if that goes well, you can have a phone call. And then if that goes well, a meeting. So for example, something, this, as I said, is going to be very tough. I can't put a time to it. I'm just trying to bring you in, basically give you an idea so that you don't think it's, for example, going to take 6 months. No, that's not the case. It can be all finished in 2 to 3 weeks, for example, or even 2 weeks, or even less if everything is going clear and basically they're all being ticked faster, it can go faster than that. But in that much time, a person understands from the major basically discussion points that we're ready to go ahead. You're not going to find out brand new things about them that like will change your whole way of looking at that person after marriage if a person discusses these topics correctly with the other person. So something like 1 email or 2 emails, let's say for example 2 or 3 WhatsApp conversations, let's say for example 2 or 3 meetings, and a person can make their decision from there. In fact, if it's a no, you can often make your decision much sooner as well, earlier. If for example, let's say on the first email that person says that I'm not ready to leave this country that I'm living in, I have to stay here for the rest of my life. Well, this is a no from the start for a lot of people. You said that, well, I can't stay in that country. Kudafis, inshallah, you find a better person, I'll also look for a better person. As in, I'll look for a person. You don't have to say better. Speaking to more than one person simultaneously, research, yes. Do research about more than one person so you can see the different people that could be suitable. Once you've started communication, no, only one person.
Awesome. Awesome. Sheikh, we have Brother Muhammad Hussein, who previously wanted to ask a question, but he wasn't able to do so. So there's a question from him, and then there's Brother Sakleen Ratansi. He's been raising his hand for long. Inshallah, his hand is not paining. So we'll take a question from him, and then inshallah we'll come to a conclusion. If that's okay.
You want to mention the Farsi phrase of that?
Yeah, please.
His hand not hurt.
Yeah. That's the Shuma Dad Nakune, right? Ahsan. Perfect, Brother Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Sheikh, you mentioned in Islam there's no arranged and love marriage. So, like, you say there's like intellectual, right? Yeah. So, could you like explain? Because how do you get to know the girl? It's either you saw her, or your family fixed something, then you started speaking to her. So that's still arranged, no?
Awesome. You guys have, mashallah, very practical questions. That's a very nice, practical, on-the-ground question. It's very good. See, finding out about suitable people. So that is people within your age range that ideally are from your culture, that generally, seem suitable right from the start for you to start research with. Yes, this requires somebody to suggest. Yes, that's correct. But alhamdulillah, in a community like ours, at least from what I know of I don't know if everyone from here is from Dar Islam or East African communities, but generally East African communities have this, where, for example, if there are girls that are generally more active in the mosque, or for example, are interested in religion, somewhere or the other they show themselves. And not because they want to show themselves, naturally, because alhamdulillah, all of you brothers over here, the ones that aren't married, are very eligible for marriage. And alhamdulillah, you're also active. People generally hear your name here and there. And unfortunately, they even see your WhatsApp numbers on the posters. I hope you guys don't get too many messages here and there from these people. But generally, your names come out. My point is that. Your names come out, you are heard of. The brothers know you. For example, let's say your sister wanted to get married, or your sister got a proposal from this other person. You know that person generally. So in a community like ours, this is something that's easier to implement. But people who don't have a community like ours, yes, there's a very tough situation, and that needs sort of special measures over there. A person needs to, and you see that a lot of these people struggle, and the reality is they struggle. That you see very suitable people that will pass the age of marriage by far, only because there was nobody that they could find at that time, and because their community wasn't wide enough to allow.
Awesome. Sheikh, there's a question from Brother Saklain Ratansi. So, Brother Saklain, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How are you doing, Sheikh? Yeah, that's not my question. Yeah, my question is basically, in our community, the way I understand, before somebody gets married to somebody else, the families ask the other families, the way they do research, the way you've encouraged it. Yeah, it's understandable, but the way I see it in our community is, anybody who's ever come into a mile's radius of that girl or that guy, they get questioned, oh, how is this guy? In that sense, somebody who's ever seen this one person in the mosque one time gets asked, oh, how is this guy? In the same sense, one time you've seen this guy smoking, oh, how is this guy? And in that same line then, after you're asking literally 70, 80 people, you will then come, after you've already done all the research, istikhara is kept as one of the most important things. The way I understand istikhara is that you only do it when you're absolutely not sure, and otherwise an istikhara would be literally, it's just like it's completely invalid. Is my understanding correct on istikhara on that matter? Thank you.
Yeah, so istikhara in your question is the first part as well, right? It's not just istikhara. Maybe you've already been muted. Anyway, I'll answer both. It's very, very good. It's very, very nice to hear these questions. It's very, very important that Islamic knowledge and sort of the teachings here are made realistic with the realities on the ground where you guys are. That's really, really important. Okay, when it comes to istikhara, in general, istikhara is to be done when a person is in a state of confusion. What does that mean? That a person says that, should I take up this job or not? First, before anything, a person has to look, does this job have anything haram in it? Does it have anything wrong in it? Obviously, if it does, then it's not the place for istikhara. That passes the first level. The second level, a person is still confused. They try and think. When they sit and then they think, they say that, look, this job has, for example, good perks, it's got a good salary, the working hours are the same, there's nothing bad about it. Alhamdulillah, let me take it up. Why am I being so waswasi? Why am I, thinking so much about it? The third stage is that didn't solve it. A thought didn't solve it. There's, for example, let's say there's two jobs you have to pick between, and you can't pick which one. Again, here a person should consult with specialists in the field, Islamic specialists, to see if any of the jobs have any sort of recommendation or either have an issue in Islam, and then specialists of the field as well. For example, you're taking up a job in banking, speak to a person who's experienced this bank and that bank, which one is more reliable, which one is better, which one, this, all these discussions. Still after this third level, a person is still in confusion, that's the time for istikhara now. So you can see how far away istikhara is. In marriage, the same. Marriage doesn't have any place for istikhara at the start. Isn't a standard procedure wouldn't need istikhara. There's sometimes where, for example, a person is facing a major, there's a lot of doubt. They've consulted, they've tried to do research, they've tried to find out, they still can't reach the conclusion. Well, that might be a place for istikhara. That there's specific cases. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. The first point you mentioned was also a very important point, that sometimes when we ask questions, we start asking, like you're saying, anyone who's come into a 1 mile radius of this person. Obviously, that's not correct. But you're right, it's something that's very much done. That, ake oche, and like somebody that you know that this person isn't even close to, doesn't even know well. No, here we're talking about close friends, madrasa teachers, neighbors if you've spent time together. So in Dar es Salaam town, maybe that can be applied. A lot of the other places of the world, neighbors aren't very close to each other. These kind of people are the people that are suggested to talk to, not just anyone that has heard about this person. Or for example, like you're saying, sometimes it even it causes negative image, like it creates a negative image. For example, you say, how is this boy? No, this boy, I saw him do this. And mashallah, this thing that you saw him do was 5-7 years ago, and that also was a specific situation. It only came up once. But unfortunately, society is judging, and it doesn't let these things go. So no, we're not supposed to speak to these people. These people don't give us a correct image.
Ahsan. Sheikh, once again, I'd like to just point out that we've gone a couple of minutes, well, not a couple, almost half an hour over our prescribed time. And for that, I really do appreciate you staying back and taking our questions. I'm sure this is a topic that naturally invites a lot of questions from all different areas of the topic. But thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for sharing with us. If there's anything that maybe we have missed out regarding the discussion, if you'd like to add on, okay, maybe we can.
Ahsant, I really want to thank you guys for organizing such sessions, and I really feel that you guys should push this through, and it should be something that becomes common knowledge, something that is not something strange. It shouldn't be something new to hear that I did research about the person I want to get married to. It's something that should become common, and it's only natural, as in it's only expected that it should be that case. In fact, it's strange that it's not that way. So I really want to thank you guys that are taking steps in this path, and I want to encourage you to keep carrying on and continuing this. I also want to thank the brothers that participated, especially with your questions. As I said, very, very good and interesting questions. I repeat again that it's a real necessity for this link to always be there between the Hawza and the Islamic knowledge and the realities on the ground, one that we're learning and one that you're facing on a daily basis. So that inshallah, that this knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt, its aim is for us to fix ourselves and improve our lives, is in a way that is practical and applicable. It's not something that you hear that when you take it to yourself, you say that, no, I can't apply this. This doesn't make sense. I can't put this into practice. So I really want to thank all of you guys, that, especially the ones that asked very good questions.
Ahsan. I agree. It's something that all of us that have joined in today have definitely taken. I myself have taken quite a few lessons from this. I'm sure a lot of us have also taken lessons and learned from each other. And I think this spirit of just being open and being able to ask something without judgment is something that I personally am really grateful for and really thankful for. And I guess one of the take-home messages that we can have from this discussion would be not to be afraid to ask questions. That there are sometimes that you might think that something is quite taboo, something that not a lot of people will understand, but in actuality there's a lot of brothers, there's a lot of people who have gone through something like this, and they can always offer themselves as guides and as mentors to answer these questions and to allow us to all move forward together. So that is something that I personally am really grateful for, and I know a lot of us brothers will continue in the spirit of being positively curious and asking the right questions and asking with the intention to learn. So with that, Bio, I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank you all for tuning in. I'm sure it's been an enlightening experience, and inshallah, once you do get married, please remember us with in duas, and also with a plate of biryani. I think Sheikh and I will really appreciate that.
Okay.
I don't know right now with the current circumstances, if you can deliver it to us, or if you can even if you can send us a picture of biryani, I think we'll appreciate the gesture. So, inshallah, thank you all for tuning in. From myself, from the DS team, we'd like to extend our appreciation to Sheikh Ali once again, and to all of you for taking your time. I know we've gone quite a bit over, but inshallah, we've come out of here with a few lessons, a little bit more of clarity, and a little less fear in regards to this topic. So, from myself, I'd like to bid you farewell. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum. Everyone can just then make their way out, inshallah. But you're more than welcome to stay if you'd like. And if you'd like to unmute yourself, we can have a little bit of discussion. People can continue airing their views. It's completely welcome. And I think I would be doing injustice if I didn't appreciate the admin and the host for today's session, Brother Muhammad Abbas Karim. Thank you very much for being seamless, for making all the background work and making everything tick. Thank you very much. And just a small reminder to everyone that this session is recorded, and inshallah we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel and our social media channels. So please do follow us, and inshallah we will be having one or two more baraza sessions in the future. So please stay tuned for those. Inshallah, we can meet again soon.
Only pure food. You want biryani only?
Brother Shamil, you can send us biryani with jalebi, please. Don't forget.
No, I will only order biryani only, but no jalebi.
No, why not? You have to send the full package. Otherwise, I would even ask for soda. But I think biryani and jalebi is fine.
ભાઈ ખર્ચા બહુ છે હમણાં હાલત બહુ ખરાબ છે પ્લીઝ
I'll take a leave if you guys.
No worries. Thank you so much.
We'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Inshallah.
More the same. Thanks for the hosting. It was very.
Alhamdulillah, I hope I wasn't.
Amazing.
I didn't bore some people. So it was good that you took most of the limelight, which is what it was supposed to be.
I don't know who's left. Otherwise, I'd say some more. Walaikum salam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah. How are you
Thank
doing,
you
man?
so
You okay?
much for the lovely insights. Yeah,
All
it
the
was
did
very,
everything.
very. Alhamdulillah, we had a very good chemistry.
Nice. You chose this time to put in a joke. Okay, Bayo, I'm on 1%, so I'm going to tune out by force or by choice. So I'd rather be by choice. Khuda Hafiz.
I'm off as well.
Khuda Hafiz.